Over the past few months, I've collected quite a few special editions, which is why the mug I chose says, yes, I really do need all these books. So I am going to do an unboxing and sharing of these special editions, as well as book reviews for the ones that I have read. So first I have this, The Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. This is the Waterstones Edition. It has this beautiful stenciled edges of red London, and then just the solid red spray on the top and the bottom. The end pages are white, gray, red, and black London map, as well as the cover having these threads design. And this version is signed by V.E. Schwab. There were a lot of different options for this book that were beautiful, but I liked staying in the color scheme of the original world building of A Darker Shade of Magic that V.E. Schwab did on the original trilogy. So this follows those characters purportedly 7 years after A Darker Shade of Magic trilogy ends with A Conjuring of Light. But V.E. Schwab does a lot of flashbacks. So even though we've advanced in the timeline, we go back a lot. And it's one of my biggest challenges with this book is that there is a lot of flashback. We do have a lot of the same characters. We have Lila Bard, we have Kel, we have Rice, we have Alucard, a lot of those older characters. But we are introduced to two new characters, Kosika and Tess, and they are in the various Londons. The premise behind this is that you don't need to read the first trilogy to be able to jump in here. And I would say that that is true only if you watch V.E. Schwab's YouTube channel. She did a whole read-along this past fall that if you haven't read that original trilogy, I think if you watch her go through it and explain what's going on, she doesn't read it to you, but she really goes into a lot of detail so you can really understand what's gone on. If you watch that prior to reading this, you would be fine jumping in and understanding the dynamics and understanding why things are the way they are. The two characters of Kosika and Tess are my favorite additions to the series. I feel like it freshens it up. I do feel like with the flashbacks, I was able to kind of figure out how they fit in there, and I really enjoyed reading this book. Next, we have Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. It has this beautiful stenciled edges on the side. I got this from Illumicrate also. One of the things that I love, and I know this is a bit controversial, is it actually has a clear cover, which I really love. It's got these birds, well, starlings on it. And then you've got this manor on the cover. And it is, I love the smoothness of the naked hardcover. And the end pages are our two main characters, Opal and Arthur, and it is the same. Illumicrates, generally their end pages are the same front and back. This unfortunately is not signed. Alex Harrow actually came in my general vicinity and I thought about going, but the Illumicrate version did not get to me in time for me to have gotten her to sign it. And so hopefully someday I would be able to, but this Illumicrate version is not signed. So this is the story, as I mentioned, of Opal and Arthur. Opal lives in a motel setting with her brother. Her mother has passed away. Her father's not in the picture. And they're in this town that just reminds me of like a southern town that is losing manufacturing jobs. And so there's really not a lot of wealth in this area, and she's really trying to get any job she can so that she can send her little brother to, it's like college or preparatory school or something. And obviously for two kids who live in a motel, I mean, she's obviously a young adult, but she's really she's scrapping to try to find money to send him. And she is always drawn to the Starling House, which is this crumbling manor. No one has lived there for a long time. Well, one time she's walking by, it's really out of the way. So like she's being drawn to it, and she stands at the gate. You can kind of see, this is that initial image, stands at the gate, and suddenly there is Arthur. He's telling her go and never come back. Well, he kind of caves in that and eventually gives her job as a house cleaner. And so she's now embedded fully in the Starling House, and there's a lot of family mystery that unfolds. She gets to know Arthur, and he's obviously of the Starling family, and the house has a secret. This, again, just like a study in drawing, it's very Gothic, crumbling manor. This goes a very different route. There's a lot of supernatural goings on that happen. There's beyond the grave activity. There's peril in, real life. And so they have to work together and try to figure out what's going on. And it is a romance, but what's nice about this is the romance is really understated and off to the side and not the main part of it. I will say, when I opened this up, again, I'm not like that strict about language, but in the beginning especially, there was a lot of like jarring cursing. And I think this a lot of times is what an author will do to differentiate between this is not a young adult book, this is an adult book, is to throw language in there. It's really the main content, I think. It's not steamy, it has any spice, but there is language right up front. Because as I'm reading these books, I think, oh, my oldest daughter would love this, but then that happens and I'm like, oh, we're gonna have to wait. So just a note of caution on that. Next, I have A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. This is a beautiful Illumicrate edition. It actually has the stenciled edges on the top and the bottom as well as the side, and they of course match the cover. The cover is very tactile. You can feel the letters are raised. It has this beautiful end papers of our two main characters. The cover is very dark academia. It's really so beautiful. And there's a signature page that was added in specifically for Illumicrate. And so this is the story of the study of the life of a famous writer in the world that Effie lives in. This world is strangely kind of at war. They've been taken over by another culture. So you've got like the North and the South. Effie is from a more wealthy area of the North, from the country that has been invaded. She goes to university. She is studying architecture because in this world, women are not allowed to study literature. It's that much of a strong influence on culture that they're only allowing men to study literature. This famous writer dies, and Effie is chosen to travel down to this crumbling manor that the writer lived at before he died. And she is being expected to redesign this crumbling manor. Once she gets there, she discovers Preston, who is a literature student. He is there to study the life of this writer, and he is from the culture that has invaded Effie's country. And so you have some racial discord there. There's a little bit of rivalry because Effie really actually wants to be in the literature college and resents the fact that as a female, she is not allowed to be there. It is really fraught with some very Gothic, creepy scenes. Everything is really like dripping and moss and crumbling. The stories that this writer writes about are all about this Fae King, and we discover that Effie knows all of these stories, is very intimately aware of all of the Fae stories by this writer. Her history sort of unfolds as she gets to know Preston and shares things with him. We get to know his history. There obviously is a relationship that might be building there, and Effie and Preston really start to uncover a lot of dark secrets about this writer. And so I don't know if I would really consider this dark academia, because while it starts in a college setting, it really does move to this more like Gothic crumbling manor feel. But I really enjoyed it as a standalone book. It is a phenomenal option. Next is Upon a Frosted Star, and this is by M.A. Kuzniar. Many of you know, if you've watched my videos, I really enjoyed A Midnight in Everwood, which is right here, which is a Nutcracker retelling. I love M.A. Kuzniar's flowery language. I love her plot development. I love the magical winter worlds that she creates. And so when Waterstones had this beautiful, again, with the stenciled edges, with the solid color on the top, when they had this as a signed special edition coming out, I went ahead and grabbed it. The interior matches with the dust jacket with the end pages, and the cover is plain. This is a Swan Lake retelling. I actually don't really know the Swan Lake story, but I do know that this is the general theme behind this. It's set in the 1930s, and so there's, again, her signature descriptive language. I love it so much. I think as a reader, you either really enjoy this writing style or you're irritated by it, and I really enjoy it. I will say, something that I learned in A Midnight in Everwood and also in this book is that if you are looking for a happily ever after tied with a bow story, M.A. Kuzniar, so far, may not be your first choice for reading retellings. I will say, however, I absolutely love a happy ending. Like, it's one of my favorite tropes. Like, I do love to have the bow tied, but her writing style and descriptiveness to me supersedes my desire for that kind of ending. And so I loved this book. And honestly, it's kind of like Dances with Wolves. If you play Dances with Wolves right up until the wedding and then stop the movie, it's not a super sad movie. I would say there is a point in this book where if you decide, okay, I'm going to read it to here, and then you end it there without reading, really, I think it's like literally the last chapter, I think you would love the happy ending. You just wouldn't want to read that final completing chapter. So still exactly what I was looking for in a winter M.A. Kuzniar read. I got these two Otherworld series by Emma Hamm books from the Bookish Box. It's my first order from the Bookish Box, and I absolutely loved Heart of the Fae. It was one of my favorite books last year. I did have a caveat that there is spice in this, but for me, I could just kind of turn the page. It's not like all throughout the whole book. You can tell when it's coming and you just kind of move past it, and it's not that much. I think Emma Hamm is writing a different genre than what I comfortably can read right now, but I loved this series enough that I wanted to get it. There are stenciled edges all along front, top, bottom. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It is not really resolved in Heart of the Fae. It does resolve in Veins of Magic. In this, we follow Sorsha. There is a blood beetle plague that is happening in her community. She does live at a house of ill repute. She doesn't work there. She just lives there and supports the girls who do work there. So that concept is there at the beginning, but again, it doesn't go into too much detail. But she has this kind of draw towards magic and realizes that she has the capacity to potentially be able to heal her family and father from this blood beetle disease. And so it causes her to go onto a quest, into a journey. She ends up on an island with a ousted Fae King who has been sent away to live on an island on his own, and he's Aman. So Sorsha's the beauty and Aman is the beast. Aman, I loved the way that Emma Hamm wrote him as a beast. As a Fae King, when he gets a wound, a crystal grows. So you can see the dust jacket is reversible, and so there's the picture of Sorsha and then Aman with his crystal injuries. She meets Aman, and they decide to work together to try to help him with not being this exile from the Fae community, from the Fae society. from the Fae world. And she obviously wants to heal her family from this blood beetle plague. And so they work together and fall in love. And then more happens in the second one that helps you to kind of see that this is really one book. Next, I read After the Forest by Kel Woods. This is also an Owl Crate book. I love the end pages are very like character art design. There is a reversible dust jacket that shows, it's like a lot going on there with the black and white, a little bit of green. There's a reason for that. One of the things I love about Owl Crate is that there's all these like little tiny Easter eggs in their designs that you don't realize until you read the book. And so it was an intentional decision for them to have green and have writing with the green. I love the mushrooms and the insects and the trees and everything that's in there. The edges are just regular sprayed edges with this like burnt orange, which again matches that fox that's there. Here's the other end paper. It is signed. It has its own signature page right inside. And so this is Hansel and Gretel when they get older and are young adults. It's really mostly Gretel's story, and she's called Greta more so than Hans. He's there, but he's really a side character. After they defeat the witch as children, when she and Hans leave and are saved and brought back to the town, she brings along the Witches Grimoire, which is a recipe book. And this grimoire talks to her kind of in her head. She seems like she's the only one who can hear it. And it has allowed Greta to make these special cookies that people love. And so she's able to earn a livelihood. But the grimoire is always kind of saying, you know, add a little bit of dark magic to this. And generally, Greta really is able to hold the door on that and keep this innocent kind of, no, I'm just making these cookies. I need it for my livelihood. And that's kind of the line. But things start to progress as she gets older, where Hans makes a bad decision and now they really need to earn more money. And so she's feeling that pressure of how can she help bring in more money? She's got the pressure of marriage looming. There is kind of this strange ruler that seems to be putting more and more taxes on the people, and she seems to have some weird interactions with people that makes us as the reader think, is there dark magic going on with her? And there is a love story. I think you can tell that. They're in a tree hugging. I don't think there's any spice in this. Not really. I shouldn't say that. I think there's a tiny bit of spice, but again, not enough that it like impacted my enjoyment of the story. So I would use this to recommend if you like fairy tale retellings, if you like the woods and creatures of the woods really kind of having involvement in regular life. It's really kind of this mishmash of a lot of those different fairy tale retelling magical tropes, in addition to the Hansel and Gretel kind of after story. These were the last special editions I received at the end of 2023. They are Owl Crate's Shadow and Bone Trilogy books. So this is the first 3 of the Grishaverse, and I love these books are so beautiful. So we have the stag for the amplifier, you have the serpent, and we have the fire drake. The colors at the top and the bottom are still stenciled. It's got ribbons. You can see the ribbons at the bottom there too. They are very solid and heavy. They've got quotes on the back. The problem with wanting is that it makes us weak. When people say impossible, they usually mean improbable. Like calls to like. The first of the books are signed. The second 2 are not signed. They have beautiful end pages. They've got these beautiful foiled naked hardcovers with the reversible dust jacket. They're just beautiful versions. I don't want to get into too much. There are 3 books in the Shadow and Bone series There are 2 books in the Six of Crows duology, and there are 2 books in the Rule of Wolves duology. And this follows Alina Starkov. She is in an orphanage with someone that she's very close to. This world, the Grishaverse world, is so hard to explain, but basically there is dark magic that has created this fold, which is like this impenetrable area that if you go in, you're most likely not going to come back out alive. I'm probably not going to get into too much detail in this. Six of Crows is usually people's favorite. The Shadow and Bone series is a wonderful series. I don't think the writing is as complex as it gets in Six of Crows, but in my opinion, the Grishaverse is something that any fantasy lover should be aware of and read and enjoy and watch the show too. This was a special edition that I purchased to go along with Belladonna, which was a subscription box, I think last year. Foxglove is the second book in that series by Adeline Grace. So what to say about this series? So Belladonna, we have Signa, who is a young girl, like young adult girl, who is people around her like are mysteriously dying all the time. Has happened so much that she can actually recognize death. Like she can see him now. If she's in a room and somebody dies, she can see him. And he realizes that they can see each other, that there's a connection there, but she gets sent off to a manor to live with wealthy relatives. The thing that I like about this book is that she actually is not beholden to them. She has her own income and money, but as a young adult female, she's not quite ready to be on her own. So the family takes her in just to kind of, you know, act as guardians. But she's very, you know, able to live on her own if she needed to. She's got access to her own money. And there's a mystery. It's murder mystery, which follows through in this. This is also a murder mystery. In this book, we follow a different character. Again, don't want to tell too much, but someone that is a female. I do love the special edition tie-in. We've got the flowers and the colors, the cover, the character artwork, the matte cover, and Adeline Grace's third book in this trilogy comes out. It's called Wisteria, and I think it's coming out, I think this year. So hopefully I will get the third book to go with that series. Next, I have What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. This is the Owl Crate edition. It has these stenciled edges on the top and the bottom, the foiling on the cover and on the back. Again, Owl Crate's books have some heft to them. It has the ribbon that seems to be customary now. It's got the foil on the cover. It has the reversible dust jacket, and it also has art on the end pages, and I think it's different. Yeah, it's different, which again, I love that Owl Crate does that. There's the letter that Owl Crate included, and then Isabel Ibanez's signature as well. This is the story of Inez, who lives in South America. Her parents go back and forth between South America and Egypt, and her parents end up going missing, passing away, and she gets a letter that says they're gone. And don't worry, you'll have your inheritance, just keep living your life. And she's getting pressure for marriage. She's always felt drawn to Egypt, and so she just gets on a boat and travels halfway across the world, ends up in Egypt, meets up with her uncle. She's really not sure. Her uncle is her mother's brother. She's really not sure if she can trust her uncle for a variety of reasons, but she's, he's her guardian. And he actually sends a young man to meet her at the wharf, at the docks, basically to tell her you need to get on a ship and go back. I mean, they're always trying to get her to go back to South America. She effectively eludes them, refuses them, and manages to just constantly push herself into the archaeological expeditions that they are involved in Egypt. There is treasure hunting and treasure hunters. There's the mystery of her parents and kind of why their disappearance was so sudden. And of course, there is a relationship that seems to be developing between Inez and then this young man who had met her at the wharf named Wit. This book at this point is pretty well known for the cliffhanger at the end. You think you've got it, like, okay, I understand what's happening. And then something happens at the end where you're like, wait, what? Maybe I don't understand. I'm hoping it's just kind of a misunderstanding. But this absolutely is not resolved in this book, and you will want to read the second one. My next special edition is A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. You can see I have the other UK versions for the first two books in the trilogy. I ended up getting not a plain version for the third one. And this is a Goldsboro special edition. You can tell because it's got the Mylar cover on it, which is their signature packaging. This has sprayed edges, the turquoise, with the stencil on the edges. There's the cover. It is not a reverse dust jacket, but the dust cover is very protected. I love the gold foiling on the naked hardcover. Not on the back, but on the spine. It is signed by Stephanie Garber. I do love also, it was number 45 of 250, so Goldsboro numbers them. So I'm not going to talk about this book. I'm going to spend more time talking about this first one so that I make sure I do not give any spoilers away. So in Once Upon a Broken Heart, we have Evangeline. And Evangeline experiences unrequited love in a very painful and kind of public way. She decides that she is willing to pay whatever price to not experience this heartbreak. And so she goes in and she ends up making a deal with a fate. And it does not turn out the way that she wants it to. And something that I love is she ends up traveling to like this northern cold country and is living in a castle, and there's a magical generational hereditary history going on that she's got to unravel. She's very much in peril. There are fairy tales in this culture that have really dictated kind of what happens over time, and Evangeline is very much a part of that. There is a love triangle in this series, although I contend it's really not a believable love triangle. I didn't ever believe it. I think sometimes the characters had to make decisions that follow along with the idea of the love triangle in order to survive, but I think their hearts were always true to one another, these two characters. And so it's just a easy, magical read. It has vampires and spirits and, again, fairy tales that come to life. And so a lot of different elements in this, but it's just a wonderful story to read, the whole trilogy. Next is a fairy loot book. This is The Forest Grimm by Catherine Purdy. This is also a fairy tale mashup. The cover is like so beautiful. The digitally sprayed stenciled edges to me are so beautiful. I love the wolf and the Red Riding and the trees, and I just think it's the stars. I just think it's beautiful. It is just regular sprayed edges on the top. We've got the artwork on the inside, and then we've got the reversible dust jacket. This very much like silvery foiled cover matte. It's a matte. It's not, feels almost like a fabric. We have the signature page, and then we have other end pages design. So this is a Red Riding Hood retelling. As you can tell, it's pretty obvious, but really does some twists on it, which is nice. Clara lives in a town. Her mother has gone missing. She lives in a town that's kind of haunted by all these people that have gone missing in the forest. And she's determined that her name's going to get drawn and she's going to be able to go into the woods and save her mother, bring her mother back. There's another character, Axel, who has lost his betrothed to the woods as well. And so they are both trying to get into the woods to try to save their missing family members. Spoiler alert, the two of them manage through a special way to get into the woods. And what they discover there is really horrifying. It's so creepy. It's really creepy. I think it's probably pretty predictable. It's probably not the most like stellar read I've ever read, but if you like fairy tales like I do and retellings, it certainly is a good book for that. And obviously the for me, the stenciled sprayed edges are what make this book a keeper for my shelf. So this is another Fairy Loot book. It is The Scarlet Alchemist by Kylie Lee Baker. This was also in their monthly subscription options. It has these beautiful stenciled edges that actually do end up at the top and the bottom. And we've got these character end pages, no reversible dust jacket, gold foiling on the cover and the spine, but not the back. And then it also has the end pages here as well. This is a signed book. I can't remember. I think it's digital signature. Fairy Loot's really moving towards digital signature. This book is steeped in Asian folklore. We follow Zelan, who is like into necromancy. She is able to get herself to cross over the river into the afterlife and pull people back. And it requires alchemy and the ability to kind of bend and utilize metal and also just natural forces on Earth. She is missing her parents, but she lives with, I think it's her aunt and uncle and her cousins, but they consider her their child or their sibling. So there's a sister, a brother, and then Zelan, who's the main character. And all three of them are really trying to study hard to get themselves to be able to earn a living, to get them up out of the poverty level that they're in. They're living in this southern part of their country, and in the southern part, the people are looked down upon and backwards and country. And so they end up getting accepted with making their first level tests into this like school setting to be able to study, to hopefully try to become a royal alchemist and an expert in the field. There are some, in my mind, a little bit difficult parts to get through. She really receives a lot of bad treatment because she's a woman. Like in one scene, and this is pretty early on, it shouldn't be too much of a spoiler, her clothes are like ripped off of her and she's just in like her chemise. It's very embarrassing and she's got a lot of hands grabbing her. And so there are kind of those scenes that, while not super graphic, are still hard to get through. But I love the Asian folklore. I love the blend of the Asian folklore with the dark academia, because they're in these schools and studying for these tests and in the library setting. But she is approached by a person of influence, and this person, he's a male, wants her to bring him back to life as she's able to do. But as she says, you're actually still alive. Like that only works for people to die. And he says, I am a target for assassination, and this will come. And as she moves to the city and starts doing these tests, she discovers who he is, how he is a person of influence. And as she spends any time, because he's constantly seeking her out because he wants her to agree to save him, she's realizing that there are threats on his life. And so this is a love story with a lot of, again, gore as she's bringing people back to life, and kind of the oddness of that. The quote that you really see with this book, because it's actually said a couple times through the book, is, you cannot create good without also creating evil. So in the back here, it's said a couple times, like she's realizing she's making sacrifices by bringing people back to life, but she's not completely aware of what those sacrifices are. So there's a mystery in here, as well as saving someone of influence, love story, Asian folklore, dark academia, all mixed together. Next, I have The Unmaking of June Pharaoh. This is an Owl Crate version. I love the cover so much with the red door. The cover itself of the naked hardback is also really lovely. I love the photography and just the floral, the diary entries. We have the end pages, which obviously is from sort of a different era. We have this end pages, which indicates that there is a love story, and the theme of, you know, she's obviously like a plant person. We've got old newspaper articles, and then there is the reversible dust jacket that has the horse, which of course is kind of a main character. Did I say The Unmaking of June Pharaoh is by Adrienne Young? So this is an adult book. She's written quite a few young adult books and series, but this is my first one that I've read of hers, and I loved The Unmaking of June Pharaoh. Obviously, June Pharaoh is our main character, and there's really, I don't want to say that much about it because I don't want to give away too much. But basically, we open up with June's grandmother passing away, and we discover that her mother, June's mother, has disappeared right at the time of June's birth, basically. And she's been raised by her grandmother. And then her grandmother has this friend named Bertie who also has helped to raise June. She's really unusual. She's developed a friendship with one person named Mason, but otherwise the town is really kind of distanced themselves from the Pharaoh women. We also know that she's going to the doctor because she's having these weird experiences where she feels like she's not in reality. And her grandmother was plagued with that, where she would just kind of like in her head go somewhere else. So it's something that sort of seems to plague the Pharaoh women. And so she's gone to the doctor to really kind of to do blood work and try to figure it out because she's afraid that it started for her young. Her grandmother was obviously older when this happened. It's starting to happen her at a younger age. And so that's how it starts. And again, I don't want to give too much away, but I absolutely loved this book. There wasn't, again, a lot of language. I don't remember there being a lot of spice. I just remember the mystery being so compelling. I even now think about this book. As I was reading it, just wanted to get back to it. I didn't want to do anything else but to get ahead, to kind of figure out like what is going on. I don't know, maybe people are better than I am, but there was a twist at the end. Once I figured out what was going on, I was like, oh, okay. And then there's a twist at the end and I was like, poof. So this was one of my top favorites in 2023.
Thanks so much for watching. Until next time.